All right, so this is a new staircase build at a house where there's an exterior entrance to this basement area that's part gym, part laundry room. But the only access is these back steps that come down from the backyard. And they've got some utility equipment out here. If you come in here, we added a load-bearing wall to carry the floor joists that are going this way across the ceiling. And we're gonna cut in a stairwell on the other side of this wall. So that's what I'm working on right now, is cutting these joists. And then the stairs are gonna come from up here, which is right near the front door and a first floor bedroom. And it'll kind of join this room to the rest of the house, which will be a nice, I think, worthwhile project. So the first step here is cutting these floor joists, and I'm using a Sawzall. I'm trying to get as straight as I can here, but I can clean them up afterwards with my grinder or fine tool. This is a new wall. Up here was a big TV room, and we created this wall as a partition so that there's going to be a door here coming down the stairs. Okay, so we'll see in the editing studio how ridiculous that last time lapse looked with getting all these blocks in place. It was messy and probably overused the hammer a little bit, but got them all in there. They're all snug, and I PL'd all the seams. So I'm not worried about these joists moving. I'm not worried about that first floor system right there. And we're moving on. Again, I'm gonna talk to the plumber about moving this clean out into the crawl space. This is the crawl space, and it's the only access to it. And because this opening is within a cement wall, we factored the layout of the stairs into that from the beginning so that we wouldn't have to cut the concrete wall and move this access point. Stepping down with the first step right here will get us down to a point where we're probably gonna, impact this opening somewhere in this bottom right corner. So I'll just change the swing of these doors to go in, and you can climb halfway up the stairs and get in there if you need to. I just texted the HVAC guy. This was an old supply. This is that high speed heating and cooling system that's common on Nantucket, and this was in the ceiling right here. So he said I can just bury this and he'll find a new way to feed it into this basement staircase. Same with these compressor lines. So it's dinner time, so I'm calling it a day, but I quickly took these measurements so I could do the math at home tonight for my stringer cuts and be ready to go when I get here in the morning. I'm using my laser on that side because when you get the overall height of the stair run, you want to make sure it's where the stair stringers land. Because let's say this concrete basement floor was uneven. If I take the measurement right here, the bottom of the stringers is going to be floating here, and it's going to mess up the whole situation. And then I have plenty of space lengthwise, but just wanted to make sure I got this measurement that it is 11 feet until this corner right here, which is a headroom issue in some situations, but it won't be here. So using this 97.5-inch drop, I should be able to figure out, with standard 10 or 11 inch treads, what these stringer cuts are going to look like. So more tomorrow. Okay, first stringer is marked out, about ready to start making cuts. Just a couple things. So the overall height was 97.5 inches. So this was from the first floor down to the basement floor. The stair riser heights are typically around 7. You want like 7 max maybe. So I divided that by 7. It gave me 13 and change. So you round up and then you know it's 14 steps total that you're going to have. So then you divide 97.5 by 14 and it gives you 6 and 15/16. And that ends up being the height of the risers here. And you mark it with your stair gauge. And this side is the height. Mark it like this. 6 and 15/16. And then the standard depth I went with, which is 10 inches for the treads. For the first step, you cut, so the tread material that I'm using on top of these stringers is an inch thick. So I cut an inch off of the bottom here to account for that, so that this step with that 1 inch tread off the concrete floor will equal the rest of the steps. So this here is 5 and 15/16, where the rest of them are 6 and 15/16. I'm also going to cut out room for a cleat here, so that's going to get nailed onto the concrete floor. It'll keep the stringers from kicking out. And then up top, on the last step, this is going to get a stair like joist hanger, attaching it to a joist on this side. And I'm going to screw that into that bare joist. And then up here, where that joist is now exposed, I'm going to add 3/4 inch trim as like a final riser that then goes up to the first floor. So I want to make sure that this tread is not 3/4 inch shorter than the rest of the treads. So I'm adding this 3/4 inch right here. So this one's wider than the rest, but it really won't be in the end. It'll get covered by this riser here. So this will be a test piece. I'll cut it. Hopefully it's right. And then I'll trace the rest of the stringers using this template. Okay, first stringer's in place and looking good. The way to make sure it came out okay was to find this location right here, which basically is, this is 6 inches, 15/16 to match the other steps. This will be the 1 inch tread that's on top of this step. And so I know the stringer has to be located right there. And when I do that, all of these come out level and we end up in good shape. And I knew that this door was going to be impacted, but again, I'm just going to swing these in. Actually, now that I see where it lands exactly, maybe I can just shorten these doors and just have them come out on top of the steps. That's an option too, but want to make sure it's not too much of a pain to climb in there. But yeah, we're in pretty good shape. As you can see, I added V-groove to these walls. This is one of those things where you always got to think 10 steps ahead. I'm very glad that I thought ahead about the width here, because by code we need at least 36 inches, and right now we have 36.5. I knew that I was going to be adding some sort of material onto these walls, after framing was done, so I made sure it had some wiggle room there. This headroom here is tight. We need 6 foot 6 inches from the slope connecting the nosings on the stairs. And I mean, it's probably okay because the nosing comes to like right here. And so technically that slope goes this way, and I think we've got 6 foot 6. But the only reason I have this joist here, it was originally over there and I moved it this way leaving room for this HVAC duct. I can push it back further, potentially angle it this way, just to give myself a little more wiggle room so if the inspector comes, it doesn't become an ordeal. But okay, so we're on to skirt boards, which we decided we wanted. And I don't know if there's a more mathematical way to cut these, but it seems like the easiest way is the way I'm doing it now, which is basically taking one of the stringers before it's installed and using that as a template to mark the size of the stringer, of the skirt board, and then moving that into place, screwing this onto the wall first, this on top, and move on from there. So I've got it in place now with basically a 5 3/4 inch reveal, which is the maximum. You can see that on the inside of the step, you know, that's as wide as I can get it in the, without having this gap show in the end. The tread and the riser will cover that small gap. So now where I cut it is basically, if I get my level, this is the floor. So if I mark it here, that will be the floor, and then I can actually mark a perpendicular line based on whatever the height of the baseboard is. The existing basement is kind of a weird setup, the way they trimmed around the mirrors, so I'm gonna figure that out. But if you knew you had, let's say, 1x6 baseboard, then you could find the closest point to 5.5 inches at this perpendicular, and then it would die nicely into the baseboard and continue around the room. On this side, this is where it's connecting to that floor joist on the first floor. And so the cut I want to make is going to be in line with this plane here. And same thing, I can, figure out at what point I want this height to stop and then cut a perpendicular line somewhere there. But yeah, then, these cuts should be dead on. Move them into place, move the stringer into place, and we'll move forward from there. All right, so we've got this tacked in place. Our skirt board ended up being a perfect fit, and our stringer is gonna go on the outside of it here. I'm just double checking that the cuts were right, and now I'm gonna move it over to the left side, make sure it works there, and cut the second skirt board for the other side. Two other marks I made were, this is where it's gonna meet the 1x8 baseboard, so 7 1/4 inches high. I'm gonna make this cut back on the miter saw, so that'll die in nicely there. I'll probably put a biscuit joint in there as well, so I can do that before I bring it back over here. And then on this side, so I've got sheetrock up here. That's gonna come down to this height, and then it's gonna start the V groove. And I'm gonna do a chair rail detail that goes all the way around with like a flat 1x4 and then some sort of piece of trim that's horizontal on top. So the 1x4 is just gonna overlap the V groove and the sheetrock about halfway. So I made this mark here to know I need to cut horizontally there. The chair rail will sit flat on top, and then again I can prep my biscuit joints as well. So cutting the second stringer now, and then we can start to actually install this stuff. Okay, progress. Stringers are in place, skirt boards are in place. Everything's coming out great. I've got this kicker in place, making sure that the stringers don't slide out. PL'd that and screwed it in nicely. I taped up the wood because I didn't have any PT, and even though this concrete's painted, concrete does carry water, which can, rot out untreated wood over time. So I have tape underneath all the areas in contact with the concrete. Our impact on this door ended up being great. We're gonna have a tread on top of this, so we'll be impacting that corner a little bit, but I changed the swing of the doors to go inside, and I can think about different ways to dress that up nicely, but the point was being able to still access the crawl space, which we can, which is great. So next up is starting to actually do the finish work on these steps, the treads and risers, and then we'll get this shelf in, we'll sheetrock the rest of these walls. And the best part is that now I can go up these stairs and into the main part of the house where my tools are, instead of having to walk outside for every little thing. So let's keep going. Okay, back for day 2 of treads and risers. We got good progress done yesterday. Gotta shout out the newest tool in my collection. This was recommended by a guy in another video. I'll try to see if I can find his and attach it below, as well as the link to this. It's a Stair tread gauge, and I cut this piece of poplar. I just bought, it came in a box with just these end pieces, but you basically, loosen these and tighten them and get your perfect scribe on both sides, and then you just tighten them up, transfer them to the miter saw, and I've literally made them perfect cuts on every single tread and every single riser. You can use it vertically too. It saved a ton of walking back and forth to the miter saw, so highly recommended. But yeah, everything's coming out great. The access to this door I'm really happy with. I was trying to figure out how to finish everything on this end. I think I'm just gonna leave it like this. You're never gonna look over it. And I thought if I extended, like if I notched this out and extended that over, that would just look weird. I think it looks better that it's the same as all the other steps. And you might collect a little dust in this area down here, but it is what it is. I have a magnet up here, so these doors will stay shut, and that's all we can do. The good thing is you can still access that door. So let's see if I can fly through these last couple steps and move on to sheetrock and the handrail. All right, so stairs are done. The next step is going to be finishing the upper half of this stairwell, which you can follow in the next video. There's a lot of details that are going to go into that, but just wanted to show how this ended up wrapping up. Wasn't sure exactly how I was going to tie in this top step here. I'm leaving this loose for now because of the way I'm going to have to tie in this chair rail over here. I got to probably do that first. But the way I framed the stairs, this top tread ended up being deeper than I had anticipated. Luckily, deeper is better than too shallow. So I added a piece of 1-inch tread back here and a 3/4 inch piece of trim to pack this out to what I needed, so that this step is the same as the rest of the steps. And this area here was covered with flooring, but I decided to cut that back because this new interior door that's going in this opening now will have a nice threshold. So this just required a quick notch on that side and cutting this back with a fine tool. I basically just marked it to the far edge of the door frame. And then because this flooring is 3/4 of an inch thick and the nosings of the stairs are 1 inch thick, I notched out underneath, if you can see. Try to get some better light. So I kept the full 1 inch thickness on the front and then used a bunch of rips to hollow out the back of this tread. So everything sitting on the old plywood is 3/4 of an inch thick. And then once it gets to this overhang, it goes back to 1 inch. Otherwise, you would have had, if I ripped it all the way to 3/4, then you would have from this angle seen inch thick, and then 3/4 thick, which would have been not ideal. So that's how you tie that in nicely. And then this is level with the floor. And yeah, really happy with how this came out. And as I said, the rest of the finished details in this stairwell will be in the next vid.